Wow.
Have you ever thought about us?
Wow.
Have you ever thought about us?
In a world of wealth and expectation, a billionaire's daughter finds her only real connection with her best friend. But one drive through Lagos changes everything, when a long-hidden confession risks their friendship and her privileged world for a chance at true love. Hello, bestie. Welcome. Please stay with me as I unfold this interesting romantic story. If you enjoy the story, please support us by subscribing to this channel and hit the notification button for more. Thank you. Grab your popcorn, sit back, relax, and enjoy this story. The sun beat down on the cleared patch of earth in the Surulere neighborhood, a stark contrast to the cool, shadowed streets of Ikoyi-Adesuwa had left just an hour before. Here, the air vibrated with a different kind of energy. The growl of a bulldozer, the shouts of construction workers, the rhythmic pounding of hammers, and the infectious, hopeful chatter of the community members who had gathered. This was the future site of the Obiakpo Foundation Children's Hospital and Community Center, Adesuwa's passion project. And standing in the middle of it all, wearing a simple polo shirt, jeans, and a hard hat, was Chuka Ease, not just her best friend, but the project's lead architect. Adesuwa stepped out of her car, swapping her designer heels for a pair of practical trainers she kept in the trunk. The moment her feet hit the dusty ground, she felt a surge of purpose that no boardroom meeting could ever provide. "Ah, Madam Adesuwa, you don't come to see our project." An elderly woman, Mama Nkechi, who ran a nearby food stall and was the community's unofficial leader, waved enthusiastically. Adesuwa's polished, gala smile was gone, replaced by a warm, genuine beam. "Mama, how now? How Pekin dem?" she asked, slipping effortlessly into a more colloquial pidgin English as she accepted a hearty hug. This was a language she never used in Ikoyi, but it felt right here. "Dem day wello. Dem day wait for this hospital finish so dem no go need to travel far when cough catch dem." As Mama Nkechi spoke, Adesuwa listened intently, her eyes missing nothing. She asked about water access, about where mothers would wait, about the fear some had of big, impersonal buildings. Nearby, Chuka was explaining the foundation work to a group of his junior architects, his voice calm and authoritative. He spotted Adesuwa and gave her a quick, familiar nod, their professional greeting, before continuing his explanation. But his eyes lingered on her for a second longer, taking in the way she effortlessly connected with Mama Nkechi, her empathy as tangible as the blueprints in his hand. After her conversation, Adesuwa walked over to where Chuka was now kneeling in the dirt, sketching something in the earth with a stick for a fascinated group of local children. "The problem with the initial layout," he was saying to his team, "is that it forces the afternoon sun directly into the recovery wards. We save on light, but we spend a fortune on cooling, and the patients are uncomfortable." He looked up at Adesuwa. "What do you think, Suwa? You felt the bake today?" She nodded, crossing her arms as she looked at the site markers. Mama Nkechi also said the women are worried the waiting area is too exposed. They want a place that feels sheltered, private, not like a fishbowl. Chuka's eyes lit up. He stood, brushing the dust from his knees. "Right. So we pivot the entire east wing by 15 degrees. It maximizes the cross breeze, cuts the direct afternoon heat, and..." He grabbed a stray piece of corrugated aluminum and a broken cinder block. In a matter of moments, Head assembled a rough, impromptu model right there on the ground. It creates this naturally shaded courtyard here, between the wings. A garden, a protected space for families to wait, for children to get some air. It's not just a fix, it's an upgrade. The junior architects watched, mesmerized. Adesuwa smiled, a flush of pride warming her chest. This was his genius. He could see the poetry in the pragmatics. A young journalist from a local online paper approached them, her phone held out to record. "This is incredible," she gushed. "The Obiakpo Foundation and Ease Architects. Such a powerful partnership. It's almost like a..." She trailed off, smiling suggestively at the two of them standing side by side, finishing her thought with, "A perfect match." Adesawa and Chuka reacted in perfect, synchronized unison. They let out identical, awkward laughs that were a little too loud, a little too forced. "Oh, no, no," Adesawa said smoothly, slipping back into her professional persona. "Mr. Ease is simply the most brilliant architect for the job. The foundation is thrilled to have his expertise." "Absolutely," Chuka chimed in, his voice suddenly more formal. He shoved his hands in his pockets. "Strictly professional. Client and architect. Ms. Obiakpo's vision is what's driving this project." The journalist looked slightly disappointed but nodded, moving on to take pictures of the site. The moment she was out of earshot, the tension broke. Adesawa let out a quiet groan. "A perfect match? Do we look like a Nollywood poster?" Chuka grinned, the ease returning to his posture. "I think she was hoping for a scoop. Billionaire heiress dates her poverty-stricken architect. Very dramatic." He meant it as a joke, a way to defuse the awkwardness they always felt when this happened. But the word poverty-stricken hung in the air for a beat too long. It was a stark reminder of the invisible line that existed between them, the one the world kept trying to draw. Adesawa's smile softened. "You're not poverty-stricken, Chuka. You're the most successful person I know." She meant it. His success was earned, brick by brick, line by line on a blueprint. Hers had been inherited. He met her gaze, and for a moment, the noise of the construction site faded. There was something unspoken in his eyes, a vulnerability he quickly masked by nudging her arm with his elbow. "Come on, client Obiakpo. Let me show you the revised plumbing schematics before you leave. I promise it's more exciting than it sounds." He led the way, and Adesawa followed, but the journalist's words lingered in the space between them. Perfect match. The awkwardness had passed, but the echo of the idea remained, a tiny seed of possibility planted in the dusty soil of their construction site. The drive from the ordered, wide-lane streets of Ikoyi to the vibrant, chaotic heart of Surulere was a journey between worlds. Chuka navigated the familiar route on autopilot, the towering glass and steel of the business districts gradually giving way to a denser, more vibrant tapestry of life. The air that filtered through his car window changed, too, from the scent of freshly cut grass and expensive perfume to the rich, familiar aromas of roadside suya spice, frying akara, and the faint, ever-present tang of diesel and humanity. He pulled his Range Rover into a narrow, bustling street, earning friendly honks and waves from neighbors who recognized the car and the man. This was where he'd grown up. This was home. The Ease family house was a two-story structure tucked between a bustling fabric shop and a mechanic's garage. Its blue paint was faded by sun and rain, and the constant hum of generators and chatter from the street was its permanent soundtrack. To an outsider, it might seem noisy, cramped. To Chuka, it was the most honest place on earth. He was barely through the front door before he was enveloped. "Nwokem, my son." His mother, Mama Neka, emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She was a small, round woman with eyes that missed nothing and a smile that could light up the whole street. She pulled him down into a crushing hug that smelled of onions, nutmeg, and unconditional love. "Anani, you'll break my ribs," Chuka laughed, hugging her back just as fiercely. "You are too thin. That office job is not feeding you. I made ofensala and pounded yam. You will eat." It wasn't a question. It was a decree. He found his older brother, Emeka, in the small living room, expertly trying to fix the antenna on their old television while a football match flickered in and out of static. Emeka was built like a wrestler, a mechanic with grease permanently etched under his fingernails and a pragmatic view of the world. "Ah, the big man from Ikoyi has decided to visit the peasants," Emeka teased without looking up from the TV. "You need a special appointment to see you these days?" "Stop it," Chuka said, shoving his brother's shoulder playfully. "You know how it is. The hospital project is at a critical stage." "With the Obiakpo girl," Emeka said, his tone shifting slightly. The TV finally cleared, and he sat back on the worn sofa. "I saw pictures from the gala. She is fine, very fine." From the kitchen doorway, Mama Neka chimed in, her voice carrying a knowing lilt. That your fine friend, NWAM? The one with the good heart and the painful story? When will you bring her to eat proper food? I will make my best jollof rice for her. Chuka felt a familiar warmth creep up his neck. His family's teasing about Adesawa was a constant, gentle pressure. They'd seen her picture, heard his stories for years. To them, she wasn't an heiress. She was just Suwa, the girl who made their serious, work-obsessed Chuka laugh. "Anani, please," he said, sinking into the sofa. "She's my friend, my client. It's not like that." "Not like what?" Mama Neka persisted, coming into the room with a bowl of peanuts. "The way you light up when you talk about her? The way you spent one whole month designing that hospital for her foundation for almost no profit? That is just friend?" "My foot." Emeka snorted. "Leave him alone, Anani. He's being sensible for once." He turned to Chuka, his teasing replaced by a rare seriousness. "But listen, Nwan M. Be careful. I'm serious. That world she lives in is not our world. You are a successful man, yes. You have done what many from this street cannot even dream of. But to them, to a man like her father, you are still the boy from Suralere. You will always be the boy from Suralere." The words landed with a quiet thud in the cozy room. They were the same doubts that whispered to Chuka in his quietest moments, the fears that had kept him silent for years. "I know," Chuka said, his voice low. "I know that." Mama Neka clicked her tongue, dismissing both of them with a wave of her hand. "Pa, what nonsense. A good heart is a good heart. Money and big houses cannot buy that. If she sees your good heart, then that is all that matters." She looked at her son, her expression softening. "But your brother is not wrong to tell you to open your eyes. That kind of love, it is not a straight road. It has many potholes." The conversation moved on to family gossip, to Amika's new baby, to the latest neighborhood drama. They ate the delicious, hearty soup, the familiar tastes grounding Chuka, reminding him of who he was and where he came from. Later, as he drove back towards the sleek, silent modernity of his own apartment in Lekki, his brother's warning echoed in his mind. "You will always be the boy from Suralere." He looked at the passenger seat, empty now but where Adesawa always sat. He thought of her laugh, her intelligence, the way she looked at him not with pity or condescension, but with genuine respect. He knew the potholes were there, had been navigating them his whole life. But for the first time, the risk of blowing a tire on that rugged road felt terrifyingly, irresistibly worth it. His mother's hope and his brother's warning warred within him, a battle as old as the class divides of Lagos itself. The private dining room at the Ikoyi Club was a sanctuary of mahogany, soft leather, and whispered conversations. The air smelled of old money, polished silver, and the faint, earthy scent of ogbono soup from the kitchen. Here, Chief Obiakpo was not just a man, he was an institution. And today, his sole focus was his daughter. Adesawa sat across from him, her posture perfect, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She felt like she was back in the gilded cage of the gala. But this one was quieter, more personal, and far more potent. "The numbers from the gala are impressive, NWAM," Chief Obiakpo began, his voice a low, resonant rumble that demanded attention without ever needing to rise in volume. He took a sip of his imported brandy. "You have your mother's touch for these things. She would be very proud." "Thank you, Papa," Adesawa said, the praise feeling like a lead weight. Compliments from her father were rarely just compliments. They were preludes. "The foundation is a wonderful endeavor. It shows heart. It shows character." He paused, setting his glass down with a precise click. "But a legacy, a true legacy, is not built on charity alone. It is built on strength, on continuity." Here it comes, she thought. "You are not getting any younger, Adesawa. It is time to think about the future. Your future. To think about partnership." He leaned forward slightly, his sharp eyes missing nothing. "A tree cannot grow strong if its roots are shallow. It needs to be grafted to another strong tree." Adesawa kept her expression neutral, a skill she had mastered in his boardroom. "I am perfectly capable of managing my future, Papa." "Of course you are," he conceded smoothly. But capable is not the same as optimal. You carry a great weight. It is a weight that should be shared with someone who understands it. Someone from a similar soil. He gestured vaguely, encompassing the entire world of old families and interwoven fortunes that existed outside these walls. Tamawa Adeyemi, for instance. His father and I were at Cambridge together. Their interests in shipping and real estate dovetail nicely with our own. He has expressed a particular interest in you. The pieces clicked into place with a cold, sickening finality. The seating arrangement at the gala. Tamawa's sudden, heightened attention. It wasn't a courtship. It was a merger negotiation. Tamawa is charming, Adesawa said carefully, choosing her words like stepping stones across a river full of piranhas. But my focus is on the hospital right now. It's a massive project. And it is in excellent hands, her father said, his tone leaving no room for argument. That young architect you're using, is it? He seems quite competent for that sort of work. The dismissal in his voice was so casual, so absolute. It stole the air from her lungs. That sort of work. Quite competent. Chuka's life's passion, his genius, reduced to a mere transactional service. Chuka is brilliant, Papa. He's the best in the city, she said, a defensive edge sharpening her words. Chief Obiakpo's eyebrows rose a fraction, a subtle warning. I am sure he is, and he is being handsomely compensated for his competence. It is good to see young men from humble backgrounds elevating themselves, but do not confuse a service provider with a partner. Adesawa. That is a critical distinction. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It was the smile he used before acquiring a stubborn company. Think about it. That is all I ask. Think about what is best for the legacy your mother and I built for you. Later that afternoon, Chuka was summoned to the Obiakpo Holdings headquarters. The building was a towering monolith of glass and steel, a physical manifestation of the Obiakpo Empire. The air inside was cool and silent, smelling of disinfectant and ambition. He was ushered into Chief Obiakpo's office on the top floor. The view was breathtaking, a panoramic sweep of Lagos and the Atlantic Ocean. It was a view that spoke of absolute dominion. Mr. Ease, Chief Obiakpo said, not rising from his immense leather chair. He gestured to the seat opposite his desk. Thank you for coming. The project is progressing well? Yes, sir, Chuka said, his posture straight, his professional mask firmly in place. He laid out the updated blueprints and the revised timeline, explaining the design changes they'd made after community feedback. Chief Obiakpo listened, his fingers steepled. He asked sharp, intelligent questions about load-bearing capacities, material costs, and ROI timelines. He treated Chuka with a cool, detached respect, the kind afforded to a skilled and useful employee. Excellent, the chief said finally, leaning back. Your work is efficient. You have a good mind for practicalities. My daughter speaks highly of your dedication. It was meant as praise, but it felt like a demarcation. Your dedication, the dedication of the hired help. She is a visionary client, Chuka replied, his voice even. It's easy to be dedicated to a project you believe in. Indeed, Chief Obiakpo said, his gaze lingering on Chuka, assessing him like a balance sheet. Vision is important, but execution is what builds empires. You are executing well. Keep me updated. The dismissal was clear. The meeting was over. Chuka had been evaluated, found to be a satisfactory tool, and was now being put back in his box. As he walked out of the imposing building, the chief's words echoed in his mind. Young men from humble backgrounds, elevating themselves, a service provider, quite competent. He got into his car, the same car where Adesawa felt free, and for the first time it felt like what it was. A vehicle owned by a man who would always be on the outside, looking up at the glittering towers of the powerful. The unspoken hierarchy had never felt more concrete or more crushing. The father's gambit had been played, and Chuka felt the checkmate deep in his bones. The restaurant was all soft lighting, minimalist decor, and the hushed, reverent tones of a place where the menu didn't list prices. Tamawa Adeyemi held court from across the table, expertly dissecting his grilled sea base while detailing his family's latest acquisition, a lucrative Port Authority contract. It's all about positioning, Adesawa, he said, flashing that practiced, brilliant smile. My father always says you don't just buy an asset, you buy the future it represents. He took a sip of his expensive white wine. Speaking of the future, your father mentioned you're looking at diversifying into sustainable energy. A wise move. We should have our people talk. Adesawa pushed a piece of asparagus around her plate. Her people. His people. It sounded like two armies preparing for a merger. She felt like one of the assets he was discussing, valuable, well-positioned, a smart acquisition for the Adeyemi portfolio. He didn't ask about the hospital. He didn't ask about her. He asked about market trends, about her father's opinions, about the synergies between their families. Each word felt like a layer of lacquer being carefully applied to her gilded cage, sealing her in. The evening dragged on in a blur of perfectly cooked food and perfectly hollow conversation. By the time her driver dropped her home at her luxurious Ikoyi apartment, she felt a profound, soul-deep exhaustion. The silence of the spacious, beautifully decorated rooms felt oppressive. She didn't bother with the lights. She walked to the balcony, overlooking the dark, shimmering expanse of the lagoon. The distant lights of the mainland seemed a world away. She felt a tear of frustration trace a path down her cheek, followed by another. It was all too much. The expectation, the curation, the loneliness of being a prize to be won. Her phone felt heavy in her hand. Without thinking, without planning, she pressed his name. He answered on the second ring. Suwa? His voice was immediately alert, tuned to the frequency of her moods even through the phone. What's wrong? She couldn't speak for a moment, just swallowed a sob. Adesawa? His voice was softer now, edged with concern. Talk to me. Where are you? Home, she managed, her voice thick. It was a bad night. I'm on my way. There was no hesitation, no questions, just 3 words and the line went dead. 20 minutes later, her doorbell rang. She opened it to find Chuka standing there, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, his hair slightly messy like he'd run his hands through it. In his hands were 2 tubs of ice cream, 1 chocolate, 1 vanilla, and a DVD of a notoriously terrible, hilarious Nollywood comedy he'd once forced her to watch. He didn't ask what happened. He just walked in, went to her kitchen, found 2 spoons, and led her to the balcony. They sat on the floor, their backs against the glass wall, passing the ice cream tubs between them. The city lights twinkled below. He put the movie on his laptop, its ridiculous plot and over-the-top acting filling the comfortable silence. Slowly, the tension began to leach out of her. The absurdity of the movie made her snort with laughter, a real, unguarded sound that felt like medicine. Between laughs, she told him about the dinner with Tamawa, imitating his stuffy pronouncements on asset positioning until Chuka was laughing too. He said our people should talk, she said, rolling her eyes and taking a scoop of vanilla. Which people? Chuka asked, deadpan. Your people of I have a soul or his people of I only talk in profit margins? The ice cream, the stupid movie, his presence. It was the antidote to the entire poisonous evening. The tears were gone, replaced by a warm, grateful contentment. The movie credits rolled. The laptop screen went dark, leaving them in the soft glow of the city lights. The comfortable silence returned, but it had changed, felt deeper, more intimate. She turned to thank him and found him already looking at her. His usual playful grin was gone. In its place was a look of such raw, unvarnished tenderness that it stole the breath from her lungs. His gaze was intense, focused solely on her, seeing past the heiress, past the frustration, right down to the woman sitting on the floor eating ice cream. The air between them grew still and charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. Her heart began to hammer against her ribs. This was different. This was not their usual camaraderie. He reached out slowly, giving her every second to pull away. His fingers, gentle and warm, brushed a stray strand of hair from her cheek, tucking it behind her ear. The touch was electric, a jolt that went straight to her core. His thumb lingered for a heartbeat, stroking her jawline. His eyes searched hers, filled with a question he had never dared to ask aloud. His lips parted. He was going to say it. She could feel the words forming in the space between them. The confession. The thing that would change everything. Her own lips parted in response. The world had narrowed to this balcony, to his touch, to the terrifying, thrilling possibility of what was about to happen. Brawling. Brawling. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet. Chuka flinched, pulling his hand back as if burned. The spell was shattered. His phone was vibrating violently on the floor beside him, the screen flashing with the name of a site foreman. A real emergency. Collapse trench. No one was hurt, but it needed his attention. Now, he scrambled to his feet, running a hand through his hair, the moment obliterated by stark reality. Suwa, I'm so sorry, I have to go, she said, her voice a little unsteady. Of course, go. He looked at her for one last, long second, a turmoil of frustration and apology in his eyes. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Adesawa was left alone on the balcony. The ice cream was melting. The city lights blurred as fresh. Confused tears welled in her eyes. But these weren't tears of frustration. They were tears of loss for a moment that had almost been, and the terrifying, exhilarating realization of what she had almost lost, and what she might desperately want. The what if hung in the air, heavier and more profound than ever before. The site meeting had been a triumph. The final structural review was complete, the last permit secured. The hospital was no longer just lines on a blueprint. It was steel and concrete rising defiantly from the earth, a testament to their shared vision. A celebratory energy should have filled Chuka's Range Rover as they pulled away from Suralire. But it didn't. A thick, heavy silence had settled in its place. It had been there since Head picked her up, a tangible third presence in the car. Adesawa had chalked it up to fatigue, to the mental exhaustion of navigating countless details. Shed tried to fill the space with her usual chatter about the project, but Chuka's responses were monosyllabic, his focus seemingly locked on the road ahead. He wasn't taking their usual route back to Ikoyi. Instead of joining the clogged expressway, he turned down a series of quieter, tree-lined avenues in Old Ikoyi, where the grand, secluded houses sat behind high walls and lush vegetation. Chuka, you're going the long way. Is there traffic? She asked, finally acknowledging the elephant in the car. No, he said, his voice low. No traffic. He drove on, his knuckles white where he gripped the steering wheel. The setting sun cast long, golden shadows through the canopy of trees, dappling the interior of the car in shifting patterns of light and dark. The air conditioner hummed, doing little to cut through the tension. Finally, with a signal that seemed more like an afterthought, he pulled the car over onto a deserted stretch of road, beneath the sprawling branches of an ancient almond tree. He cut the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. Adesawa looked at him, her concern now blooming into full-blown worry. Chuka, what's going on? You've been quiet all afternoon. Is it the project? Did something happen? He didn't look at her. He stared straight ahead through the windshield, his jaw tight, his chest rising and falling with a deep, unsteady breath. The golden light of dusk painted his profile, highlighting the tension there. Chuka? She prompted, her voice softer. He turned then, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. It was a turmoil of fear, resolve, and a vulnerability so raw it was almost painful to witness. This was not her confident best friend, the brilliant architect. This was a man standing on the edge of a precipice. Suwa, he began, her name a rough whisper on his lips. He swallowed hard. I have to tell you something. And I'm terrified, because I could lose the most important person in my life. The words landed like a physical blow. Her heart began to hammer, a frantic drum against her ribs. Lose me? Chuka, you're scaring me. You can tell me anything. You know that. She reached out, intending to place a comforting hand on his arm, but hesitated, arrested by the intensity of his gaze. I know, he said, the words laced with a painful irony. That's the problem. You trust me completely, and what I'm about to say changes everything. could break this, break us. He finally moved, his hand reaching out not to take hers, but to rest on the center console between them, a bridge not yet crossed. A plea for connection before the storm. For the last 10 years, Suwa, he said, his voice gaining a little strength, a desperate earnestness. I've had a front row seat to your life. I've seen you navigate your world with a grace that astounds me. I've watched you cry over heartbreaks that never deserved your tears, and I've celebrated your victories like they were my own. He paused, his eyes searching hers, begging her to understand. And through all of it, I've been in love with you. The world outside the car windows, the rustling leaves, the distant sound of a generator, the fading light, ceased to exist. There was only his confession, hanging in the air between them, vast and terrifying and beautiful. I tried to ignore it, he continued, his voice a low, urgent murmur. I told myself you were my best friend, that I couldn't risk this. I told myself I was just the boy from Suralire who built a good company, and you were, you, Adesuwa Obiakpo. He shook his head, a sad, gentle smile touching his lips. But that's not who you are to me. To me, you're the woman with the infectious laugh who cares more about a child's smile than a stock portfolio. You're the one who hates olives and loves terrible Nollywood movies. You're my Suwa, and I am so deeply, completely in love with you that it terrifies me. Tears, warm and utterly unexpected, welled in Adesuwa's eyes, blurring his face. She looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the faint worry lines etched on his forehead, the earnest hope shining through the fear in his deep brown eyes, the slight tremble in his hand still resting between them. She saw her best friend, and in a dizzying, heart-stopping rush, she saw everything else. The solid ground he had always provided. The way his quiet presence was the only thing that could calm the storm of her life. The hollow space in her heart that had never been filled by wealth or status or the tamawas of the world, because it was a space shaped exactly for him. All this time, she whispered, her voice thick with a torrent of emotions. Shock, wonder, a dawning, radiant joy. All this time, he confirmed, the vulnerable smile returning. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. She didn't let him finish. Her hand, the one that had hesitated, moved, covered his on the console. Her fingers, adorned with a simple gold band she loved more than any diamond, laced through his. The connection was electric, a circuit finally completed after a decade of being switched off. Don't you dare apologize, she said, a tear tracing a hot path down her cheek. She brought their joined hands to her chest, holding them over her pounding heart. Chuka, you idiot. All this time I was waiting. Waiting for what? He asked, his thumb stroking the back of her hand, his eyes wide with disbelief and a hope so fragile it shimmered. For you to see me, and for me to realize that the love of my life was the man who drove me around Lagos, making me feel like the most normal, most cherished woman in the world. The relief that washed over his face was so profound it was like watching the sun rise. A shaky breath escaped him, and he brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to her knuckles, his eyes never leaving hers. The gesture was so tender, so filled with reverence, that it stole her breath away. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. But she met him halfway. In the quiet intimacy of the car, surrounded by the fading golden light of the Lagos dusk, Adesuwa Obiakpo kissed her best friend. And it wasn't just a kiss of passion, though that was there, a thrilling, undeniable current. It was a kiss of homecoming. It tasted of shared secrets, a decade of friendship, spilled coffee, ice cream on balconies, and a future, finally, perfectly, beginning. It was the most romantic moment of her life, and it happened in the passenger seat of a familiar Range Rover, with the man who had loved her all along. The world did not right itself. The axis of Adesuwa's universe had been permanently, irrevocably tilted. When their lips finally parted, it was not with awkwardness, but with a shared, breathless wonder. They stayed close, foreheads resting together, their ragged breaths mingling in the small, sacred space between them. The only sound was the frantic, joyful hammering of her own heart, so loud she was sure he could hear it. She opened her eyes. His were still closed, his long lashes dark against his skin. A single tear had escaped, tracing a path down his cheek. She reached up, her touch feather light, and wiped it away. The intimacy of the gesture, so simple and yet so profound, made him let out a shaky breath that was half laugh, half sob. Suwa, he whispered, her name a prayer on his lips. A giddy, disbelieving laugh bubbled up from her chest. It was the same unguarded, loud laugh he always teased her about, but now it was filled with a pure, unadulterated joy. Chuka, she breathed back, her voice trembling with emotion. You really, I really, he confirmed, his own voice husky with feeling. He pulled back just enough to look at her, his eyes searching hers, still afraid it had been a dream. And you were waiting? The reality of it, the sheer, miraculous truth, crashed over her. The years of easy companionship, the almost moments on the balcony, the hollow feeling after dates with other men. It all snapped into a perfect, crystalline focus. It had always been him. It had always been leading to this. Tears, warm and happy, welled in her eyes again. All this time, I just didn't know what I was waiting for. I thought what we had was everything. I didn't know it could be more. He brought her hand back to his lips, kissing each of her knuckles with a reverence that made her shiver. It can be everything and more, Suwa. I promise you, can be. They sat like that for a long time, wrapped in the quiet twilight. There were no more words for a while. They just held hands, their fingers intertwined, his thumb drawing slow, absent-minded circles on her skin. She studied their joined hands, her manicured fingers with their simple ring laced with his, the architect's hand, strong and capable, with a faint smudge of graphite near the thumb she hadn't noticed before. Every point of contact felt electric, new and yet familiar. This was Chuka, her Chuka, but he was also this new person, this man who loved her, whose heart she held in her hands. The duality was dizzying and beautiful. He was the first to break the silence, a practical thought piercing their bubble. It's getting dark. I should get you home. The word home felt wrong. Home was here in this car with him. The Ikoyi apartment was just a house. I don't want to go, she admitted softly, leaning her head against his shoulder. She felt him tense for a second, then relax, his head tilting to rest against hers. The scent of him, his cologne, the faint smell of his shampoo, the essential Chukaness of it, enfolded her. It was the most comforting smell in the world. Neither do I, he murmured into her hair. We could just drive anywhere. But they didn't drive. They stayed parked under the ancient almond tree, talking in hushed, wondering tones. They revisited 100 old memories, seeing them now through this new, dazzling lens. That time in final year when Deji asked me to the party and you offered to help me study instead, she said, a smile in her voice. He groaned. I was green with jealousy. I nearly failed that economics exam because I couldn't concentrate. I just kept imagining him trying to hold your hand. She laughed, the sound echoing softly in the car. And I was so annoyed with you for ruining my plans. I thought you were just being a possessive best friend. I was, he admitted, a possessively in love with you best friend. The conversation was a dance of discovery, of connecting dots across a decade. The drive to pick her up from bad dates. The way he always knew her favorite snack when she was stressed. The unwavering belief he had in her, not as an heiress, but as a person. It had all been love. It had always been love. Eventually, the sky turned a deep indigo, and the streetlights flickered on. Reality, with all its complications, began to gently press against the windows of their sanctuary. Your father will be wondering where you are, Chuka said reluctantly. His voice laced with a new worry she could hear. The confession was out. The joy was real. But the obstacles were still there, looming larger in the darkness. Let him wonder, Adesawa said with a newfound courage. But she knew he was right. She straightened up, though she didn't let go of his hand. Okay, Take me home. He started the car, and the engine's purr felt like the ending of a perfect dream. But as he pulled back onto the road, his right hand immediately found her left again, holding it firmly on his thigh. The connection remained. He drove her to her building, but instead of dropping her off at the curb, he found a parking spot. He walked her to her door, their hands still linked. They stood there under the bright porch light, the real world waiting. So, he said, a shy, hopeful smile on his face. What happens now? Adesua looked at her best friend, her love, and felt a surge of certainty so powerful it eclipsed all fear. She reached up, cupped his face, and kissed him again, softly, surely. Now, she said against his lips, we find out. She slipped inside, leaving him standing there, his fingers touching his lips where hers had just been, a universe of possibility shining in his eyes. Leaning back against the closed door, Adesua listened to his footsteps walk away. She brought her own fingers to her lips, a slow, dazed smile spreading across her face. The aftermath was not chaos. It was the most profound peace she had ever known. The world outside their bubble had not changed. The paparazzi still lurked, her father's expectations still loomed, and the chasm between their social realities still existed. In the cold light of the morning after the confession, the sheer magnitude of what they had begun settled over them, not as a burden, but as a shared secret they would fiercely protect. Their first text exchange that morning was a masterpiece of coded language, a thrilling, giddy dance. Chuka, 7:14 a.m. Good morning. Did the sky look different to you when you woke up? Or is it just me? Adesua, 7:15 a.m. The sky is bluer. The sun is brighter. Must be a trick of the light. Or maybe it's just me. Chuka, 7:16 a.m. It's not just you. Have a good day, client Obiakpo. Have a good day, Sua. They had agreed on the drive to her apartment. Secrecy. Not out of shame, but out of a desperate need to have something that was purely, wholly theirs before the world crashed in with its opinions, its judgments, and its inevitable attempts to tear them apart. They were building a foundation, and they needed it to set without any outside tremors. And so, their secret garden began to bloom in the hidden corners of Lagos. It was lunch hours that stretched long past 60 minutes. Not at the fancy restaurants where she might be seen, but at a small, hidden buka in Abaland he knew, where the jollof rice was spicy and the tables were tucked away from prying eyes. They would sit, knees touching under the small table, sharing a bottle of Malta Guinness and talking about everything and nothing. Their conversation now laced with a new, electric undercurrent. The way his hand would brush hers as he passed the salt was a bolt of lightning. The way she'd laugh and lean into his shoulder felt like a revolutionary act. It was late-night calls that lasted for hours. They'd both be in their respective beds, the city asleep around them, speaking in hushed tones. What are you wearing? Head whisper, his voice a low rumble in her ear. She'd giggle, a sound she never made with anyone else. A very expensive silk pajama set that's utterly impractical. I'm wearing the faded Fuda Eagles jersey, he'd reply. The coffee-spilling jersey? She'd tease. The very one. It's my good luck charm. The silence that followed would be warm, intimate, filled with the unspoken memory of how it all began. It was stolen moments at the construction site. They maintained a perfect professional facade in front of the workers and his team. But once, in the half-built shell of a recovery ward, away from prying eyes, Head pulled her behind a concrete pillar. The air was thick with dust and the scent of fresh cement. We can't, Shed whispered, even as her hands fisted in his polo shirt. I know, Head murmured, his lips hovering inches from hers. I just needed to do this. The kiss was quick, fierce, and tasted of promise and potential. They broke apart at the sound of approaching footsteps, their professional masks snapping back into place so seamlessly that a worker asking about rebar specifications would never have guessed. It was driving nowhere. They'd end meetings and instead of going home, they'd just drive. With music playing softly, her hand resting on his thigh, his covering hers. They'd talk about their days, their fears, their dreams for the hospital, and now, tentatively, their dreams for them. These drives were the pillars of their new world. a moving sanctuary where they could just be. One afternoon, they were at a bookshop in Lekki, pretending to browse different aisles. She felt him come up behind her in the poetry section. He didn't touch her, just stood close enough that she could feel the heat of his body. "See anything you like?" he asked, his voice low. "Maybe," she said, her heart fluttering. She pulled a book from the shelf. This one. It was a collection of love poems. He took it from her, his fingers brushing against hers. He opened it to a random page, read a few lines silently, and then looked up, his eyes holding hers. "He gets it," Chuka said simply, his voice full of meaning. He bought the book and slipped it into her bag later, away from the cashier's eyes. Inside the front cover, had written, "For all the words I'm not saying yet." See, they were collecting these moments like precious stones, each one a secret treasure. Every hidden smile, every brushed hand, every text that meant more than it said, was a brick in the wall around their private world. The pressure of the secret was immense, a constant, low hum of anxiety. But the joy, the sheer, unadulterated thrill of having found each other, was a force powerful enough to hold it all at bay. For now, their secret garden was in full, glorious bloom, and they were its only, blissful inhabitants. The bubble was too perfect to last. They had been careful, but in Lagos, where a tipped-off paparazzi could buy a journalist a new car, absolute secrecy was a currency they didn't have enough of. It happened on a Tuesday. Adesuwa was in a foundation board meeting, discussing funding allocations. The room was all polished mahogany and serious faces. Her phone, face up on the table, lit up with a series of frantic, back-to-back notifications from her assistant, followed immediately by a call from Chuka. She muted it, a faint prickle of unease running down her spine. The meeting adjourned. The moment she stepped into the hallway, her assistant, Neka, rushed toward her, face pale, iPad clutched in her hands. "Ma, you need to see this," Neka whispered, her voice tight with anxiety. On the screen was the homepage of Naija Buzz, Lagos' most notorious gossip blog. The headline was in bold, screaming font, "Obiapko heiress secret love. Billionaire daughter canoodling with commoner architect." Beneath it was a grainy, zoomed-in photograph. It was taken through a windshield at a stoplight. It was them in Chuka's Range Rover. Her head was thrown back in laughter, and Chuka was turned toward her, not laughing, but looking at her with an expression of such raw, unguarded adoration that it was utterly undeniable. The intimacy in that look was 1,000 times more damning than any kiss could have been. The caption read, "Adesuwa Obiakpo and architect Chuka Ease looking very cozy. Sources say this friendship has been heating up for months. What will Daddy Dearest say?" The world tilted. The air left Adesuwa's lungs in a whoosh. The polished hallway seemed to close in on her. "It's everywhere, Ma," Neka said grimly. "Instagram, Twitter, WhatsApp groups. It's the only thing anyone is talking about." Her phone rang again. This time it was her home landline. The caller ID displayed her father's private study. The ice in her veins turned to solid dread. She took a shaky breath. "Neka, clear my afternoon." "Already done, Ma." Adesuwa walked to her office, closed the door, and leaned against it. She looked again at the photo. Despite the terror, a small, rebellious part of her heart clenched at the way he was looking at her. He had never let that look show in public before. He had been so careful. One moment of unguarded love, and their entire secret world was exposed. She answered the phone. "Papa, come home." His voice was not loud. It was low, cold, and sharper than a shard of glass. Now, the line went dead. The drive to the Obiakpo mansion was a blur. Paparazzi had already gathered at the gates of her office building, their cameras flashing like a grotesque lightning storm. Her driver had to inch through them. She kept her head high, her face a mask of impenetrable calm, but her hands were shaking in her lap. The mansion felt like a tomb. The usual staff were nowhere to be seen. Her father was waiting for her in his study, standing by the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the immaculate gardens. He didn't turn around when she entered. He simply held up his own tablet, displaying the same damning headline. "Explain this," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Papa, it's not what it looks like," she began, the weak, cliched defense sounding pathetic even to her own ears. He turned then, and the look on his face made her blood run cold. It was a mixture of pure fury and profound disappointment. "Not what it looks like," he repeated, his voice beginning to rise. "It looks like my daughter, the heir to a billion-dollar empire, is making a fool of herself with a service provider. It looks like you are dragging our name through the mud for a cheap thrill." "It is not a cheap thrill," she shot back, her own fear giving way to a surge of anger. "His name is Chuka. He is brilliant and kind, and he loves me. And I love him." The word love hung in the opulent room like a declaration of war. Chief Obiakpo's face darkened. "Love? Do not be naive, Adesuwa. What can a man like that love about you except your bank account? Except your name? He is a gold digger, playing a long game, and you are falling for it with the gullibility of a child. You don't know him. You have no idea what we have." "I know enough," he thundered, finally unleashing his rage. He slammed his hand on the desk. "I know that he is from nothing. I know that he sees a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and he is taking it. I will not stand by and watch you throw yourself away on a boy from Suralire who has no business dreaming of a woman like you." Each word was a hammer blow, designed to shatter her resolve, to belittle what she held most precious. "You will end this," he commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Today, you will call him and you will end this farce. And you will begin to repair this catastrophe with a suitable partner. Tamawa's family has already called. The embarrassment is unprecedented." Adesuwa stood her ground, tears of fury and hurt welling in her eyes. "No." Her father stared at her, as if seeing a stranger. The silence that followed was more terrifying than his shouting. "No?" he finally said, his voice dropping back to that chilling calm. "Then you leave me no choice. That hospital project is frozen. Every foundation grant, every line of credit, is on hold until you come to your senses. And if you think that boy's fledgling company can survive the weight of the Obiakpo Empire falling on it, you are even more foolish than I thought." He turned his back on her, dismissing her. "Get out of my sight." Stumbling from the study, Adesuwa felt the walls of her gilded cage not just close in, but begin to crush her. The secret was out. The war had begun. And the first casualty, she knew with a sickening certainty, would be the dream they had built together, the hospital, and the love that had designed it. The fallout was immediate and brutal. An email from the Obiakpo Foundation's legal department arrived in Chuka's inbox before Adesuwa had even left the mansion. It was cold, formal, and utterly final. "Regret to inform you that all disbursements for the Suralire Children's Hospital project are hereby suspended pending a full financial review. All construction activities must cease immediately." It was a death sentence for the project. And it was a message, written in legal jargon, meant for him. Chuka read it standing in the middle of his small office, the morning sun streaming through the blinds, illuminating the detailed models and framed blueprints that lined the walls, the trophies of his hard-won success. The email felt like a physical blow to the gut. He sank into his chair, the air knocked out of him. This was his life's work, his passion project, the thing he and Adesuwa had built together. And with one command from her father, it was crumbling to dust. His phone started ringing. First, his site foreman panicked. "Oga Chuka, some men from the foundation are here with a court order. They are telling us to pack our tools and leave. What is happening?" Then his bank manager, polite but concerned, asking about the outstanding loan payments for the equipment lease. Then his suppliers, one after another, their friendly tones evaporating, replaced by hard-nosed demands for immediate payment. The boy from Suralire, the service provider. The weight of the Obiakpo Empire was not a metaphor. It was a boot on his neck, pressing down. Adesuwa's calls came through one after another, but he let them go to voicemail. He couldn't talk to her. Not yet. The shame was too acute, the humiliation too raw. Her father's words, gold digger, boy from nowhere, no business dreaming, echoed in his mind, amplified by the ringing phones and the impending ruin of everything he'd built. He had known the risks. His brother had warned him. But knowing a storm is coming is different from being caught in the hurricane. Adesawa felt the pressure from the other side. Confined to her apartment, she was a general under siege in her own home. Her father had not just frozen the project. He had frozen her. Foundation staff were instructed to report directly to him. Her credit cards were declined. Even her driver was reassigned. She was cut off, a prisoner in a penthouse, meant to sit in luxury and contemplate her disobedience. Her calls to Chuka went unanswered. Each unanswered ring sent a fresh spike of terror through her heart. Was he hurt? Was he angry? Was he believing the terrible things her father had said? When he finally answered, his voice was flat, drained of all its usual warmth and energy. It was the voice of a man defeated. Suwa. Chuka. My God, I've been so worried. I saw the email. What he's done. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, he interrupted. But the words were hollow. He's protecting his empire. I get it. He's wrong. And I'm going to fix this. I'll talk to him, I'll make him see. How, Suwa? The question was sharp, laced with a frustration she'd never heard him direct at her. How will you make him see? By reminding him how brilliant I am? He doesn't care. He sees my postcode, not my blueprints. He sees my last name, not my character. The line was silent for a moment, heavy with unspeakable truths. He called me a gold digger, Chuka said quietly, the words dripping with pain. Is that what people will think? Is that what you'll have to fight every day? That I'm with you for your money? No, Chuka. No one who knows us would ever think that. But no one knows us, Suwa. He shot back, his voice rising for the first time. The world knows the story they just read on Naija Buzz. The world will believe what your father believes. And I cannot spend my life proving I'm not a thief for loving you. I can't watch my business, my reputation, everything I've bled for, be destroyed because I fell in love with the wrong person. The words wrong person hung between them, a devastating accusation. So what are you saying? Adesawa whispered, tears streaming down her face. That this is it? That we give up because it's hard? I'm saying maybe my brother was right, he exclaimed, the pressure finally cracking his calm exterior. Maybe I was a fool to think I could cross this divide. Maybe loving you is the most selfish thing I've ever done because it's going to cost you everything. Your family, your legacy. You are my legacy, she cried, her voice breaking. You and that hospital and the future we want to build. That is the legacy I choose. But the fight had gone out of him. The constant ringing of his phone, the fear in his foreman's voice, the cold, hard reality of his financial collapse. It was a tide too strong to swim against. I need some time, Suwa, he said, his voice ragged with exhaustion. I need to figure out how to save my company, how to pay my team. I can't think straight. He wasn't just pulling away from the fight with her father. Adesawa felt him pulling away from her. The connection that had felt so unbreakable in the car, so electric in their secret moments, was now stretched thin and frayed, threatened by the immense, unequal pressure from the outside world. The call ended not with a promise, but with a hollow goodbye. Adesawa sat alone in her silent, luxurious apartment, the walls feeling higher and more impenetrable than ever. The pressure points had been found and pressed, expertly and mercilessly. And under the weight of it all, the foundation of their new love was already showing deep, terrifying cracks. The silence from Chuka stretched for 2 days. 2 days of agonizing stillness, where every unanswered text felt like a nail in the coffin of their future. Adesawa paced her luxurious prison, her father's ultimatum echoing in the hollow space. She could have her life back, the money, the status, the foundation, if she simply relinquished her heart. It was a transaction, the oldest one in the book. But the image that haunted her wasn't of her father's disappointed face or the glittering gala. It was the look in Chuka's eyes in that grainy photograph. The unguarded, absolute adoration. That was real. That was hers. And she would not let her father's world commodify it. She didn't call him. She didn't text. She dressed not for a battle, but for a declaration. Simple linen trousers, a plain white top, her hair pulled back. She looked like herself, the self she was with him. Then, she walked out of her apartment, hailed a taxi. A novel and exhilarating experience, and gave the driver an address that made her heart pound not with fear, but with purpose. She found him where she knew he would be, not at his office, not at home hiding from his creditors. He was at the site, their site. The construction zone was eerily silent. The bulldozers were still. The generators were off. The skeletal frame of the hospital stood against the Lego sky, a dream frozen in steel and concrete. He was sitting on an abandoned stack of cinder blocks, his head in his hands, staring at the dusty ground as if it held the answers to his ruin. He looked up as she approached, his expression a complex map of shock, love, and profound exhaustion. He began to rise, to speak, an apology already forming on his lips. She held up a hand, stopping him. She didn't need his apologies. She needed him to hear her. "My father thinks love is a transaction," she began, her voice clear and steady, carrying in the quiet space. "He believes you are a bad investment, that I am devaluing the Obiakpo brand by choosing you." Chuka flinched, starting to look away, but her gaze held his. "For 2 days, I sat in that golden cage he built for me and I thought about it. I thought about the easy path, the path of least resistance. The path that leads to a life with Tamua Adeyemi and a legacy built on mergers and acquisitions." She took a step closer, and it felt like a death sentence. Tears filled her eyes, but they were not tears of weakness. They were tears of clarity. "And then I thought about you. I thought about the boy who spilled coffee on my book and argued about socioeconomic theory. The man who builds gardens into his blueprints because he cares about the people who will wait in them. The man who looks at me like I put the stars in the sky, not like I'm a star he wants to acquire." She was standing right in front of him now. She took his hands, pulling him to his feet. His hands were calloused, familiar, real. "You are not a transaction, Chuka Ease. You are my best friend. You are the love of my life. And this," she gestured to the silent, half-built hospital around them. "This is not just your dream. It is our dream. And I will not let him take it from us. I choose us." The defeat in his eyes began to melt away, replaced by a dawning, wary hope. "Suwa, the money, my company, hell destroy it. Let him try," she said, a fierceness in her voice he had never heard before. "I am not my father's puppet. I am Adesuwa Obiakpo, and my name, my legacy, is what I decide to build with it. And I decide to build it with you." She reached into her bag and pulled out a simple, folded document. It was the concept proposal for the hospital, the very first one they had drafted together on his scratch paper. "We started with nothing but an idea and a belief in each other," she said, her voice softening. "We can do it again. I have my own resources, my own contacts. It will be harder. It will be slower. But it will be ours. No one else's." Chuka looked from her determined face to the proposal in her hands, and then back to her. The weight on his shoulders seemed to lift. The boy from Surelier who had built himself from the ground up smiled. A real, true smile for the first time in days. "You're crazy," he whispered, his own eyes glistening. "I'm in love," she corrected. He pulled her into his arms then, holding her so tightly it felt like he was anchoring them both to the earth. It was not the kiss of secret, stolen passion. It was a kiss of partnership, of a shared future, of a choice defiantly and joyfully made. When they parted, he kept his forehead resting against hers. "So what's the first step, partner?" Months later, the Obiakpo Foundation Children's Hospital opened its doors. It was smaller than originally planned, its funding a patchwork of independent donors and stubborn perseverance. But it was complete. It was beautiful. The opening ceremony was filled with music, laughter, and the excited chatter of the Surelier community. Mama Nkechi cut the ribbon, her smile brighter than any camera flash. Standing to the side, hand in hand, were Adesuwa and Chuka. They were a team in life and in work. Their love was no longer a secret. It was a fact, weathered and hardened by struggle, and now shining openly for all to see. Across the crowd, standing apart, was Chief Obiakpo. He had come, though he had not been invited. He watched not the ceremony, but his daughter. He saw the way she looked at the architect beside her, not with the polished grace of a society heiress, but with the radiant joy of a woman truly, completely loved. He saw the way the architect looked at her, not with greed, but with a protectiveness and pride that mirrored his own, however misguided. He saw the hospital not as a blot on his legacy, but as a testament to a different kind of strength, a strength he had not taught her, a strength she had found on her own. He did not approach them. He did not smile. But as he turned to leave, the grudging respect in his eyes was the closest thing to a blessing they would ever get. And for now, for the two of them standing together in the sun, surrounded by the life of their dream, it was enough. They had chosen each other, and in doing so, they had built a love stronger than any empire.